All right, so one movie down, 10 more to go. It is 1:10 in the morning. Thoughts on Phantom Menace? I still really like it. In comparison to the other prequels, I think that it still had a lot of good practical effects. It was before CGI really took over the franchise, before everything was in front of a green screen. Plus, that pod race scene and the Darth Maul fight, still two of the greatest scenes in the franchise ever. And I'm saying it, Duel of Fates is the best piece of music in the entire franchise, including original trilogy. Fight me. Now it's on to, historically, my least favorite movie in the franchise, Attack of the Clones. So let's see how it goes. Hey, all you cool dorks and kittens out there. It's 3:30 in the morning, and I just finished Attack of the Clones. Still probably my least favorite of all the movies I'm watching today. That said, it had a lot of potential, and I think that's why I found it so frustrating, because I genuinely liked, the whole story of the impending war and the investigation of who's trying to kill Padme. I thought that there was some real potential for a cool detective story in there and a cool build up to a war story that just got lost in not the best dialogue, way too much CGI. This was the first time that I think George Lucas really went overboard with it. It's also the first movie ever completely shot on digital, which is groundbreaking in it itself, but I think a lot didn't work, but there are still some really cool moments in it. I love the Battle of Geonosis. I think that, that final, it's not the final shot. The final shot is Anakin and Padme getting married, but one of the final shots of Chancellor Palpatine looking out at the clone army while the Imperial March plays is really, really cool and just chilling. So, next up is Revenge of the Sith, which I can admit isn't the best one, but it's the first movie I ever saw at midnight. It holds a special place for me, and I've always felt like it was the most rewatchable of any of the Star Wars movies. But let's see if I feel the same way in 2.5 hours. See you then. Hey, all you cool dorks and kittens out there. It is now 5:50 a.m., and I have just made it through the original trilogy. I've just finished Revenge of the Sith. Final thoughts. I still think it's the most rewatchable of the prequel movies, at least for me. Like I said before, it was one that always held special meaning to me. It was the first movie I ever saw at midnight. I was in 10th grade when it first came out, and it's very nostalgic for me, I guess, in a way that the original trilogy would have been for someone who grew up then. Yeah, it's got its cheesy moments. It has its weird humor. It has like these weird, oddly placed jokes that I don't know if we're meant to laugh at it or cringe at it. Ian McDiarmid is in a totally different movie, but it's awesome. It's like he's in a B movie. He's in a Roger Corman movie, and he's the only one that knows it. He is by far the most entertaining part. I love seeing him have so much fun with it. It has some of the coolest lightsaber fights with Anakin versus Obi-Wan mixed with Palpatine versus Yoda. And the second best use of Duel of Fates, second only, of course, to Darth Maul. So we are now moving away from the prequels and on to the two spin-off movies. First up, Solo, a movie that I almost jumped out of the theater yelling at for reasons we will discover. Let's see how I like it now. It is now 8:05 a.m. and I came outside just to remember what the sun looked like. So I just finished up Solo. There were definitely things I appreciated more, watching it a second time. I had only ever seen it in the theater, and then now I really liked Paul Bettany as Dryden. I thought he was kind of a fun, unhinged, crazy villain. Loved Donald Glover as Lando. I've been a fan of his since Community. 6 seasons in a movie. True fans know what I'm talking about. But ultimately, I still feel like Solo just was a really unnecessary spin-off prequel. It explained a lot of backstory that we didn't necessarily need to know all happened in the same week of Han Solo's life. And it suffers really badly from prequelitis, from little things like the Imperial officer coming up with his name, Han Solo, or him meeting Chewbacca and saying, "Oh, well, that name's too long, you're gonna need a nickname." Get it, audience? Get it? And, of course, the worst of all offense, the return of Darth Maul for no reason other than he's a popular character and studios and fans just can't let characters stay dead. Something that this franchise is going to have a much bigger problem with later today. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. For now, it's on to Rogue One. So, Rogue One. I'm just going to say it. It's the best Star Wars movie that Disney has made since they took over. I love the war movie aesthetic. I love that it doesn't feel like just a random, pointless prequel spinoff like Solo. It's actually telling, a contained, interesting story and adding to the mythology from New Hope. I love the characters. I love they're all as interesting as each other. I love the awesome Vader scene at the end. And it has such a bittersweet ending that really captures the essence of Star Wars, the idea of this rebellion fighting against an evil empire and the necessary and tragic sacrifices that come with that. We see Luke destroy the Death Star in New Hope, but that can't be done without this team making this sacrifice. And it's always been my favorite of the Disney ones, even more so than any of the sequel trilogy, which we'll get to. But next up is the one that started it all, A New Hope. It is now 12:25 p.m. That's not a watch. And I've been awake for something like 30 hours at this point. I'm not sure what's real. But what I do know is that New Hope is a 70s classic that still holds up today. It's the one that started the whole franchise. And out of all the ones I've seen today, as well as all of them in general, it's the only one that doesn't have any baggage tied to any other ones. It's the only one that's not trying to shoehorn connections to other movies in the series, whether they work or they don't work. It feels the most organic, the most standalone, for obvious reasons, because of how it came out. But I just, it's one that I grew up on. I think that it really captures that spirit of adventure that the first trilogy was just so known for. We sympathize with Luke about, being stuck in the mundane everyday life and yearning for more. And, just lightsaber fights weren't quite what they were going to get later, but that's okay. It's never a bad time to watch, the original movie. And I'm very, very excited because next up was historically my favorite movie of the entire series. Now, right now, it's like a tie for me between Rogue One and New Hope. But we'll see if Empire still holds up for me next. Okay, so I have no idea where I am or what time it is. Just kidding, I do. I've been up for 32 hours, but it's okay because I just finished Empire Strikes Back, which is still my favorite Star Wars movie out of all of them because of this guy right here. He's not just an Easter egg, you see. This guy, I love all the stuff with Yoda training Luke, all of his, life lessons about do or do not, there is no try. Luke failed because he didn't believe in himself. And I've always really related to all that. So for that reason alone, it's my favorite. But other than that, I think it's objectively the best out of all of them. It raises the stakes from the first one. It does what sequels are supposed to do. It takes the story in a new direction. It's a bit more tense. It's a bit darker. It goes for more mature themes that the first one didn't really go for. And a lot of people feel that it ends on kind of a downer note. I say it ends on kind of a gritty, dark, realistic note that sometimes things are messed up. And sometimes you have to solve it by seeking the help of Ewoks. So, still my favorite movie out of all of them, but I think thus far I would I may be willing to put Rogue One as my second favorite. I don't know yet. I still gotta watch the Return of the Jedi and the new trilogy. But we'll see. Anything you want to add? When 900 years old I will not look so good. Well, you're made of plastic, so joke's on you. Okay. I'm just hanging by the door to remind myself that I can go outside if I want. I don't have to stay here. I don't have to finish all these movies. Because Return of the Jedi is still great. Beginning kind of slow. I've always felt that way. It suffers from that problem of every trilogy having the second movie end where, one of the characters gets lost somewhere and they gotta go find him. So they spend the whole first act of the third one retrieving him, but that has nothing to do with the rest of the plot. So I feel like you could lose all the Jabba stuff. I mean, the Sarlacc pit scene is really cool, but that whole thing doesn't need to take that long. You need to get to the Emperor sooner. You need to get to Endor sooner. That being said, I love everything with Luke and Vader and the Emperor in the throne room. To me, that is probably my favorite sequence in the whole Star Wars franchise. The Ewoks are Ewoks. They're teddy bears. What do you want? What do you expect? So, thus ends the original trilogy. And so begins the sequel trilogy, which, if you know me, you know I have opinions on. But I can leave anytime I want. Alright, I'm escaping. I'm going over here, down there, making a run for it. Just so I can go to a place where the sequel trilogy can't get me. No, it's not that I hate Force Awakens. I don't. I legitimately wanted to like it. And from a stylistic standpoint, it's very well done. It's well acted, it's well directed, the visuals look great. They went back to using a lot of good practical effects. It's got an awesome cast, including a lot of alumni from Lost, compliments of J.J. Abrams. So that was cool. But it's a remake. If I wanted to watch New Hope, I would just watch New Hope. And I feel like they didn't trust the audience enough with something different. And after everyone complained about the prequels for getting too political, they said, all right, well, let's just give them a remake. And, well, the box office dollars demonstrated that that's exactly what the people wanted. They don't know what they want. And here we are. So, I have mixed feelings about Force Awakens. It has a lot of great potential. I love Finn. I think that his storyline about a stormtrooper, going against the grain doesn't get enough attention or credit that it should, because it's kind of a huge deal that is never brought up again, and I'll get more on that in a later sequel. but it's better put together than the prequels. But from a story standpoint, I will always respect the prequels more because at least they tried something different. Yes, George Lucas may not have had the best dialogue or the best directing or the best line readings for his actors, but you could see he was trying to tell a story. Force Awakens felt like a Disney product trying to sell us nostalgia by giving us the same movie we got already. I hated it when Jurassic World did it, and it annoyed me when Star Wars did it. Same year. Bad year for that. But here we go next. We got only 2 more left in this marathon. I've been up for like 36 hours, so that's on me. Next up is Last Jedi, the one that nearly broke the internet and at risk of further enraging the internet. I actually really liked, for reasons I will get into after I watch it. So, until then. Well, here we are. And then there was one. So I just finished Last Jedi. I was one of the few people, I know that it was really divisive. I was in the camp of people who liked it because, as you saw with, how I felt about Force Awakens, I felt like Rian Johnson tried new things. And while I didn't agree with every choice he made, for example, Leia doing her Mary Poppins Super Saiyan flight through space was kind of ridiculous and hard to take seriously. The casino planet was interesting, but just felt like a side quest. And these are all things that other people have discussed much more in depth than I will or can. But I respected that he tried different things, and I know that even though they didn't all pay off, I'm glad he did. I loved the concept of anyone can be anything. Because in this series, it always felt like you could only be or do something if you were a member of the Skywalker family. So it felt like, the democratization of the Force and how anyone could use it, particularly that stable boy at the very, very end. So I love Last Jedi. It's definitely my favorite of the sequel trilogy. And I can understand why people were upset because it was so sort of out of left field. And I think it kind of had the worst response ever with our next movie, Rise of Skywalker. This is one that, if you want, you can listen to me rant about it on the Philly Film Brothers podcast. And we'll see if I have more to rant about tonight. But here we go. One more. I've been awake for almost 40 hours. But as soon as Rise of Skywalker is over, I get to go to bed. So, looking forward to that. Until then. Well, I'm never doing that again. No, not marathoning all the Star Wars movies and staying up for almost 2 days straight. That I'll probably do. I mean, watching Rise of Skywalker. Now, as I said before, if you want to listen to me rant on it to no end, just watch the Philly Film Brothers podcast. But just, it's fan fiction. It's so obvious that Disney had no clue what they were doing with the sequel trilogy, that there was no blueprint, outline, or semblance of an idea of what the narrative was going to be movie to movie. So they kind of just made it up as they went along. So they remade New Hope, and then Rian Johnson said, let me try something different. Some of it worked, some of it didn't. And then they said, oh, well, nobody liked that. Bring back Palpatine. People like him, even if it totally goes against Anakin fulfilling the prophecy of destroying the Sith. And yes, I know, I read he's a clone. And that's how it was, because it's a clone of Palpatine. That's stupid too. this is what this was a series that should be held to a higher standard, a standard of quality, a standard of something. I don't know. I just it's between all the there's like three fake out deaths. The fact that Palpatine comes back, the fact that it's really just another. It doesn't really wrap anything up, and it. I said earlier that Force Awakens feels like a product more so than a film, and this one does too. The difference being Force Awakens, to its credit, was a better put together product than this one. So I would I struggle between it's definitely bottom two with Attack of the Clones. It's just a matter of which one is worse than the other. But that said, this was kind of a fun experiment to do, even if I'm completely exhausted right now and about ready to collapse. Let's do this again next year.